Imagine this. You are in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. No land, no ships, no signal. Just endless water in every direction. The sky is turning black. The wind is getting louder. And waves are growing bigger every minute. Then out of nowhere, a wall of water rises in front of you. In that moment, you realize something terrifying. No one is coming to save you. This isn't a movie. This really happened. And the woman at the center of this story would soon face one of the greatest survival challenges ever recorded at sea. Her name was Tami Oldham. In 1983, Tami was only 23 years old, but she already knew exactly how she wanted to live. She didn't dream about expensive houses or fancy cars. She wanted adventure. She wanted to sail. The ocean gave her a feeling that no city ever could. It was peaceful, unpredictable, and free. That's where she met Richard Sharp, an experienced British sailor who had spent years crossing oceans. Richard was calm, confident, and deeply respected the sea. Tami admired that about him, and before long, the two fell in love. Their relationship wasn't built around luxury, it was built around adventure. They spent their days sailing, repairing boats, sharing simple meals, and talking about the future. They dreamed of seeing the world together, one voyage at a time. So when they were offered a job to deliver a 44-foot yacht named Hazanya from Tahiti to San Diego, they didn't hesitate. It was more than 4,000 miles across the Pacific, but to them, it sounded like another unforgettable adventure. Before leaving, Richard carefully checked every rope, every sail, and every piece of equipment. Tami stocked food, water, and emergency supplies. They studied the weather forecast several times, and everything looked normal. Calm seas, favorable winds, no serious storms expected. There was no reason to think this journey would be any different from the others. The first few days were almost perfect. The ocean was calm, dolphins swam beside the yacht, and the nights were filled with stars. They laughed, talked for hours, and imagined where life would take them next. Years later, Tami would remember those days as some of the happiest moments of her life. It's strange how life works. Sometimes everything feels perfect just before everything falls apart. A few days into the trip, Richard noticed something unusual. The wind had changed, the air felt heavy, and the waves no longer moved the way they had before. Most people wouldn't have noticed, but experienced sailors know the ocean gives warnings long before a storm arrives. Richard quietly checked the weather again. This time the news was different. Hurricane Raymond had grown stronger and changed direction. Their route was now dangerously close to the storm. Richard immediately changed course, hoping to stay clear of the hurricane. It was the right decision, but nature had other plans. Within hours, the blue sky disappeared behind thick black clouds. The wind became so powerful, it was difficult to stand. Rain slammed against the yacht, and waves began crashing over the deck. Every minute, the sea became more violent. The yacht rose high above the water, then dropped into deep valleys between massive waves. Suddenly, the boat that had once felt strong seemed incredibly small. Richard secured the sails while Tami clipped herself to a safety line. They barely needed to speak. Both knew they were now fighting the storm instead of sailing through it. Then Richard looked ahead, and his face changed. Tami followed his eyes. A gigantic wave was racing straight toward them. It was unlike anything they had ever seen. Richard shouted for Tami to hold on. She grabbed the safety line with all her strength. The wave rose higher, higher, and then it crashed into the yacht with unimaginable force. Everything went black. For a few terrifying moments, Tami had no idea if she was alive or dead. When she finally opened her eyes, she was lying inside the damaged yacht. Blood covered her face, every muscle in her body ached, and her head was pounding. She tried to stand but immediately collapsed. The boat was barely recognizable. Broken wood was scattered everywhere, equipment had been ripped apart, and seawater poured through every opening. Then she looked around for Richard. He was nowhere to be seen. At first, she refused to believe it. She shouted his name again and again, hoping to hear an answer over the roaring wind. Nothing. Then she noticed something floating outside the boat. It was a safety rope stretching into the waves. Richard had been wearing that rope when the giant waves struck. Tami pulled it in with shaken hands, praying he was still attached. But when the end of the line reached the boat, it was empty. Richard had disappeared into the Pacific Ocean. Just hours earlier, they had been planning their future together. Now she was completely alone. Most people would have given up right there. Tami thought about it too. She was badly injured, exhausted, surrounded by thousands of miles of open ocean, and her only companion was gone. But giving up would guarantee one thing: she would never make it home. So instead of crying forever, she forced herself to move. One small step at a time. The yacht had lost its mast, its navigation equipment was heavily damaged, and there was almost no way to communicate with the outside world. Tami searched every corner of the wreck, collecting anything that might help her survive. She found a small emergency sextant, a few paper charts, limited food, and containers that could catch rainwater. It wasn't much, but it was enough to give her something even more valuable than supplies. It gave her hope. For the next several weeks, survival became her full-time job. Every morning she checked the damage, repaired what she could, rationed every bite of food, and collected rainwater whenever dark clouds appeared. She fished whenever possible, knowing every meal might be the difference between life and death. The days were brutally hot, the nights were cold and lonely, and the silence was almost unbearable. Sometimes she spoke out loud, just to hear another voice, even though the only person listening was herself. As the days turned into weeks, the emotional pain became just as difficult as the physical struggle. She constantly thought about Richard. She replayed the moment the wave struck over and over, wondering if there was anything either of them could have done differently. But the ocean doesn't give second chances. Eventually, she realized that surviving didn't mean forgetting. It meant carrying those memories forward while refusing to let them destroy her. After 41 exhausting days drifting across the Pacific, Tami finally spotted something she hadn't seen in weeks: land. At first, she thought she was imagining it, but as the hours passed, the outline became clearer. She had reached the island of Hilo, Hawaii. People rushed to help the exhausted young woman who had somehow crossed one of the world's largest oceans on a broken yacht. Doctors treated her injuries, but no one could heal the loss of the man she loved. Tami's story quickly spread around the world because it wasn't just about surviving a hurricane. It was about refusing to surrender when every reason to quit was staring her in the face. Years later, she would write a book about her experience, inspiring millions of people. Her incredible journey even became the Hollywood film Adrift. But behind the movie was a real woman who lived through every terrifying second. Her story reminds us of something we often forget. Courage doesn't mean you're never afraid. Courage means choosing to keep moving even when fear is all around you. Sometimes life can change forever in a single wave. And sometimes the greatest victory isn't avoiding the storm, it's finding the strength to survive it.